Hello. This is a time to talk about stories. This is a time to enjoy the conversation. And I am very pleased to have Deborah Felmeth today. She has engaged in a project that has taken her a long time and has resulted in a great production, interesting and fascinating, remarkable. And we're going to let Deborah tell the story. And we invite you to this time, and please enjoy yourself.
Thank you, Len. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's been my honor, really, to embark on this project, which is the book Syria, Remember Me. But to begin, I'd like to tell you how I got to Syria, because that's my story. And of course, it's all of our interwoven life stories that I think are the real fabric of our culture. And so I was born in New Jersey, and I was the daughter of a Presbyterian minister. And I am the daughter of a Presbyterian minister, I should say. And there were some things in my very young life that were so instrumental in weaving the cloth of who I have become that I want to mention them. And one is the fact that very early on, through the church, I discovered that music was the place that I was most comfortable and felt most alive. So I realized that was going to be part of my life for the rest of my life, and it is. And then in 1967, something happened that I didn't understand, but it turned out to be important, and that is that I witnessed my father's anguish over something. And he was distressed. He was very much not himself. And as a child, as a teenager, I observed this, and then I said, "What is it?" And he said, "It's the SixDay War." And I didn't know what that was at the time. I didn't really understand it. I understood the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, the wars that I had studied in school, but I didn't understand the SixDay War. And a couple of years later, I had begun to understand the modern concept of war a little bit more. And I was protesting the Vietnam War with my father again, it just so happens. So those things were strong threads in my early life. And if I fast forward then to 1991, when the United States entered the Gulf War, I admit I had a knee-jerk reaction. And that was, whatever's the problem, war is not the answer. So I was very upset about the Gulf War. And I took it upon myself to find a way to go to the Middle East, because I thought that I could not find out about the Middle East. What was the Middle East? What was this place that I really didn't know too much about? And so I took a job teaching music at the international school, kindergarten through 12th grade, in Damascus, Syria. And I feel as if I fell into a most extraordinary position. Syria, with its ancient history and its extraordinary culture. They say that Damascus is the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. And although I'm sure I heard the word from my father even in the pulpit as a young child, I don't really remember that. But I certainly fell under the spell of the word Damascus. So when I arrived there, I recognized that pretty quickly, I recognized that I was being given a treasure. In fact, I felt almost all the time as if I was receiving something amazing. And of course, being a tourist, a foreigner in that place, everything was new. I remember the scent of the place was new. It was spices that I hadn't smelled before, and dust. It was so dry. I arrived from a July in Vermont with its 1,000 shades of green to a Syria that was a rosy colored brown and a grayish brown and a sort of a creamy colored brown. It was more shades of brown than I knew existed. I'd never been to a desert. And so that was also something that was amazing. So all of my senses. And then I heard the call to prayer, which, of course, from every minaret in the city, and there are thousands of mosques, 5 times a day fills the air with the sound of 1,000 voices, because they're all just slightly different, and each one is a couple of seconds earlier or later than the one that comes before. And then I learned that those calls to prayer were related to the sun. So one is before the sunrise, it's at dawn, and actually before you see the light in the sky. They say you know the time because you cannot distinguish a piece of white paper in the darkness. Once the dawn light has started to arise, you can see that white, apparently. And then one when the sun is at its zenith, a call again when it is halfway to sunset, one just before or as the sun sets, and one an hour after sunset. So the sound, also the sound of many different street sellers in Damascus, all of them selling anything from fruit and vegetables to the man who was coming by and with a beautiful cry saying, you know, what do you have for sale? Anything you don't need, I will take it away in my cart. Wonderful thing. There was a man that I used to hear his voice. He had such a good voice that if I heard him anywhere in town, I would go around the left, take a right, find where he was, because he was selling prayer beads. And he would cry out, Ishaqwa lamin yadayam yadayam, Ishaqwa alamin, which means, to whom can we complain? You are eternal. You are eternal. And of course he was selling the prayer beads. He was saying, here, have some prayer beads, then you have someone you can talk to. You can give your complaints. So I started to take photographs of just about everything, and I never imagined at that point in my life that I was photographing in order to create a book. But because of the recent events in Syria, the tragic upheaval, the forces that have conspired to really wreak havoc and destruction upon that fabric of culture and all the people who live there, I realized that I needed to write and to publish the photographs so that people could understand who are the Syrians. What I know of their culture is that they are among, or perhaps they are, the most hospitable people on the face of the planet, and generous. Their culture is based on honor and dignity and memory. The way that they refer to each other is rarely with a personal name, but with a relationship name. So, do you have any children?
2.
Who's your eldest?
My boy.
And what is his name?
David.
So you would be known as Father of David, Abu David, or Abu Daoud, right? And so immediately anyone meeting you would know something about your relationships, right?
Right.
And a person might be known as sister of my uncle's wife, or son of my cousin, or any variety of names. Now this creates a web of understanding that we're all interrelated. And it's a fabulous, beautiful weaving of culture. One of the things that I found to be beautiful and devoted to memory. So when it came time to name this book, I remembered a story that came from a time when I was on the Euphrates River. And the Euphrates is a great queen of a river, and it drops down into Syria from the Turkish mountains and sweeps across the Syrian desert in a large arc and enters into Iraq, where it joins the Tigris and empties into the Arabian Gulf. So there are 710 kilometers of Euphrates. And I know that I, as a child, heard the names Tigris and Euphrates, and they were like great living beings. And when I finally got to visit them, I went, it's not that they were, they are great living beings. And so being from Vermont, I had to take a kayak and go down the Euphrates. And I was on the river in this small boat. And curious thing about the Euphrates, there are not many boats on the Euphrates River. They still very much fish from the shore, casting nets. I felt very much like I was in a biblical story when I watched some of the fishermen there. Now there are some boats, but not a lot. So when a woman and 2 children saw me in this little boat, they came running down the bank, and I was in the boat doing a long curve, and we did that math triangulation and met right there. Right. And the little boy was about 7 or 8 years old, and a real live wire, a trickster kind of a boy, and he loved holding the boat. We gave him that job. It was like, just hold the rope here. And the daughter was a 13-year-old, maybe, and shy as a wildflower. Every time I looked at her, she would look away. She would just do and yet I could feel her. Every time I wasn't looking at her, I could feel her looking at me and wondering, like, who are you? Where did you come from? Well, her mother did all of the talking, and she said, who are you? Where did you come from? Where did you get this boat? Where are you going? Where will you sleep tonight? What are you eating? Where are your children? How can you be doing what you are doing? And do you love Syria? And I said, yes, I love Syria, and I do love Syria. And then I asked her a lot of questions, and we pretty soon realized it was time to part. So the little boy pushed us off, and I was picked up by the current very quickly because it was just the far side of the curve, and without paddling was already swiftly away from her. And I turned to wave goodbye, and I saw that she was doing this, and she was tugging. She was really tugging hard on her finger. And in one swift and gracious move, she threw her ring to me. And I caught it because her intention was like an arrow. It was like into my hand. And as she threw the ring, she said, Zakarini, which in Arabic means remember me. And I have her ring. I have it. It's in my desk in Damascus, so I don't have it here.
Right.
But I have her ring, and it was a command. It was the most human, beautiful desire to be seen, to be known, to be remembered. Don't forget me. Remember me. And so she titled this book, and there are many Syrians for whom I dedicate this book, to whom the book came from them, it's for them, and it has been heartbreakingly beautiful as I realize that there are Syrians all around the globe right now who, at least for the time being, have lost their home. And they write me and say thank you, because I am telling, I believe, true stories about their country and trying to express something of the beauty. And I really feel that that's important.
Listening to you is very fascinating because it seems, help me if I understand, it seems like the storytelling just comes from everywhere. It comes from the music. It comes from the day. it comes from the experience of meeting a mother and a son.
Exactly.
And experience. Is that a...
Well, yes, I think that that
say
is
some
true.
more about it, because that's a rich way of storytelling.
Well, in some way, I think storytelling is it's happening all the time, but it's largely unconscious. And I think that something that has happened to me in Syria, in my life there, is I have become conscious of the fact that story is being woven. Right now, as we sit here, story is being woven. And certainly because of the extraordinary nature of some of my experiences in that country, I realized that story was, it was lines of intersection between people and place, between sound and light and time of day. And so it really is, I think, a fabric through which we all live our lives and yet seldom become aware of, oh, this is a story. And yet it's been my delight in sort of uncovering some of those. I'd like to tell a story about the great Umayyad Mosque, which is in the center of Damascus, because its story is so ancient that it is truly mind-boggling. The Umayyad Mosque is very large, and I've been asked, is it as large as a football field? And I thought, wow, I don't even really know, but I would say yes. My gut feeling is that yes. If you take the large courtyard and the large interior prayer hall, you would have perhaps even more than a football field. Now, this is, many consider it the fourth holiest site in Islam after the two mosques in Mecca, in Medina, and then the third in Jerusalem, the Dome of the Rock, Al-Aqsa, and then the Umayyad Mosque of Damascus. And it has 3 minarets. And one of the minarets is called the Jesus Minaret. And the Jesus Minaret, and I just love that here we have a mosque with the Jesus Minaret. And this is the place to which the believers in Islam believe the second coming of Christ will be here, to this place. On all 4 sides of this stone minaret is the Star of David. So here we have the 3 monotheistic religions, bang, all in one spot.
Together.
But if we go deeper, the history of this place is that it was a cathedral before it was a mosque. So it's much older than the 1445 years of Islam. And in fact, inside the prayer hall is the mausoleum which they say holds the head of John the Baptist. And this is still in the mosque because the believers in Islam understood that John was a great prophet because he foretold the coming of Jesus. We're still not back, though, to the deeper layers, because the layer underneath the cathedral layer is the Roman temple to Jupiter, which is pre-Christian, and underneath that is an Aramaean temple, which is to the god of thunder, Hadad. And this is one spot. Now, if that's not a lot of story, all in, and it's a very, very lively and beautiful place. And,
when stories are told, do they tend to be verbal, or is writing an important part of?
It's much more oral culture.
Much more oral.
Much more oral culture. In fact, there is the tradition of storytelling, which takes place every evening about 5 o'clock.
Okay.
in the cafe. And this is done by the Hakawati. And the Hakawati is the storyteller. And he tells the same stories over and over and over and over again with little changes. So that the people who come to hear the stories, they already know what's going to happen. They already know that Antar, who is the great warrior, is going to battle Abs for the love of his life, Abla. And they're going to take sides in the battle. And you'll hear them, the Hakawati will give them the indication of, okay, this is the part, you know, and then you'll hear one side of the cafe, everyone goes, rah, 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 you know, and then the other side says, rah, 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 because they're all, you know, they're in arms against each other because they know the stories. Now, the tradition of Bedouin poetry is also oral culture, oral tradition. And it is improvised, and it is also ancient. So it's this combination of, I can change this anytime I want. You think you know where I'm going with this because you've heard this story before, and yet then the improvisation takes over and something completely new happens.
Isn't that
So
exciting?
it's a very, very powerful part of the culture. Very powerful.
So you're both rooted in the heritage, but at the same time you're able to participate.
Yes.
And that's an amazing gift.
It is an,
you
it
know,
is an amazing
because
gift.
a lot of times we don't see life as having those possibilities.
Here's a picture of the storyteller. And he has a sword in his hand. I hope you can get this. You tell me whether or not I'm
Oh yeah.
in focus there.
Yes, that's
Can you see that?
sure. That's
So the Hakawati, right? And there he's got on a beautiful hand-woven vest, and he's wearing his tarbush, his red cap, and he has his sword in his hand because he's telling the story. I think the Antar story tonight.
right.
And what he would do also, if people were not paying close enough attention, might be that he could see that you weren't really paying attention, and he's got a little metal tea table, and he would whack that sword down, and all of a sudden you would go, oh, whoa, whoa, wait, okay, because they're not just telling for, you know, to take up time. They're really, they really want to. Oh, I hope that's going to stay there. I don't know if it will.
Okay, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
So storytelling is a big part of the culture.
you brought a picture.
Oh, I
that you
did.
painted.
I
Could you-
did.
Could you tell that
I
story?
did. You didn't know I was a painter, did you?
No, I didn't.
All right.
But I'm
So-
not surprised.
Here's a painting that I did. It's one of those things I was inspired. And I don't know that it's a good painting, but it is a painting that comes from a mosque. And what it's trying to do, what I'm trying to do, is show some of the extraordinary detail of design. Ornament is everywhere, all the time in Syrian culture, and in interiors and also in walls, ceilings. I don't know how to describe it.
It's everywhere.
It is everywhere. And an old man reading a holy book, right? And I saw many times in many different mosques and in churches and in Jewish synagogues this same picture, shall we say. But at the bottom, what I was really practicing was my Arabic calligraphy, which goes all the way here. And this over here says, Al-Malakut, Al-Samawat, wa Al-Ard. And that is the ownership or the kingship, the spiritual province of God is over the heavens and the earth. And this says, وَخَلَقْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلْ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ, which means everything that is created comes from the water. So both of those are expressions that come out of the Quran.
Strong emphasis upon creation.
Yes, and everything coming from the water. I mean, I think that this is the the element that we all need to devote our greatest love and attention to right now if life on this planet is to
Right, and one of the most serious difficulties.
Yes, and one of the reasons that there is a war in that part of the world. And it's an ignored part, but it shouldn't be.
No.
Yeah.
Beautiful picture.
Thank you.
I like
I
that.
tried.
Yes.
I don't think I'll become a famous painter, but hey.
But it tells, it captures.
Thank you.
I can see that old man. I might be that old man.
I think he's a relative of yours. هذا بيكون الابن جدك والأبو للعمو تبعك.
Yes.
That's your relationship name.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
I would gladly accept that and hear that. You brought your drum. Do you want to play a little bit on your drum?
I'd love to. I'd love to.
And I love your singing. So,
well,
tell us your story.
I'd like to play a song that was made famous by the great Lebanese singer Fayrouz. And as every Syrian knows, Lebanon isn't even 100 years old, that it is a part of Syria. So they call her one of their own. And it's a song in which you'll hear three words over and over again. One of them is hawa. And hawa means wind, breeze. When I say nisam al-hawa, it means the softest caress of breeze. And the breeze brings scents and sights and sounds with it. And another word you'll hear is khudni, and that means take me. So the song is requesting for the wind, which has brought all of these sights and sounds and memories, to take me to Biladi, my home, my country. Take me home.
Thank you very much.